My name is Rowena Callahan, and on the first dawn of October, I opened my eyes to the pale rose ceiling of the flat I shared with the man I was certain I would spend forever beside. The diffused light across the plaster molding looked almost bridal, soft, anticipatory, as though even the sun appreciated a good love story. I pressed a palm to the place on the mattress where Caleb usually slept. It was still warm from where he had kissed me goodbye before cycling to the hospital for the early surgery roster. The hum of his electric kettle in the kitchenette lingered in the walls like an afternote, promising routines and futures built in steady layers. I lay there for the length of 3 slow breaths, letting myself believe that predictable happiness could stretch unbroken right up to the day I walked down the aisle in my ivory crepe gown. But happiness, I have learned, rarely survives contact with family expectations, especially when those expectations belong to my younger sister Verity. Verity Callahan was born dazzling. Even as toddlers, the pair of us seemed cast for roles we never auditioned for, Rowena the sensible, Verity the spectacular. She was the child who toddled into the middle of Mum's book club meeting, jelly smeared across angelic cheeks, reciting nursery rhymes in perfect pitch while balancing on one foot. I was the quiet sibling who fetched a damp flannel to wipe the sticky sugar from her fingers after the applause subsided. Teachers adored her. Boys orbited her. Shopkeepers gave her extra lollies just to see that cinema screen smile. I loved her fiercely and jealously, like you love a comet you know can burn you if you stand too close. So when Caleb asked me to marry him last Christmas outside the skating rink in Cambridge, while fairy lights tangled like constellations over the ice, I had braced for Verity's light to eclipse even that. I didn't want it to, but little sisters with supernova charm seldom ask permission before shining. I spent months choosing a venue impossible to steal. A restored stone barn in the Cotswolds, with vaulted timber beams and a hush that felt older than history. I hunted until I found the dress whose silence could compete with her noise. A tailored sheath of crepe that whispered rather than shouted, with illusion sleeves stitched in frost-fine lace and a row of seed pearl buttons down the back like poised dewdrops. When I stepped into that sample at Lavinia Fairfax Atelier, the mirror showed a woman who believed she deserved center stage. Because the flat Caleb and I rented above the flower shop had a wardrobe no deeper than a tea tray, I left the gown with Mum for safekeeping. Mum's house, a rambling Victorian just outside Oxford, was full of cedar-lined cupboards and, I thought, unbreakable trust. Every other Saturday, I drove up in Caleb's ancient Volvo to visit the dress. I would unhook the calico bag, run my fingertips beneath the hem, and fill my lungs with the lingering scent of gardenia the atelier spritzed to christen every finished gown. Afterwards, I would brew tea for Mum and listen to her update me on Verity's latest audition, promotion, or adventure. Each anecdote delivered with pride and a nervous glance to gauge whether her elder daughter's smile stiffened. I practiced letting the comparisons slide off me like water. Then, in late August, Verity announced, with fireworks on Instagram, that she was engaged. I saw the post during a 10-minute espresso break between surgical theater turnovers. Caleb handed me the phone, his gloved hands still smelling faintly of surgical spirit, and there was my sister, in a meadow of sunflowers somewhere in Tuscany. A tall man with groomed stubble and a fit model jawline knelt in front of her, holding up a diamond the size of a raindrop caught mid-fall. The caption read, "He said forever under 1,000 suns, so I said yes twice." Caleb's eyebrows formed question marks. I shrugged as though nothing about the timing felt like a hijack. Within hours, Verity streamed a second reel. She would host an engagement soiree on the first Friday of October at the Pembroke Hotel Ballroom in Oxford. Black tie optional, champagne mandatory, #Telstag Velvet Verity * already trending. Mum phoned that night using her "Are you sitting down" voice. She chirped that Verity hoped I would be her maid of honor. She chattered about color palettes and canapes. Then, almost as an afterthought, she mentioned Verity had borrowed something from the hall cupboard, because the atelier fittings in Milan were behind schedule. "Borrowed what?" I asked, feeling gravity pool behind my knees. Mum hesitated long enough for the penny to thunder. Just the crepe sheath, she said, as if discussing a cardigan. Only until her own dress arrives next month. She promises it will come back spotless. Quote, I remember the exact pitch of my pulse in that moment. A bird trapped between stained glass windows. Caleb found me staring at the kettle as it screamed into boil. He placed a steady surgeon's palm between my shoulder blades, anchoring me to the lino. We'll sort it, he said. It's a misunderstanding. His certainty tasted like anesthetic, numbing, not healing. Over the next week, I played telephone tennis with Verity, each call going straight to voicemail. I messaged politely, then pointedly, then with edges sharp enough to slice through diamond hashtags. She replied with a single voice note. Relax, R.O. You're still the bride. I just needed something classic until my couture arrives. Think of it as sisterly synergy. Her tone oozed the kind of charisma that turns theft into borrowing. The sun kept rolling westward regardless of my fury. I worked double shifts, counted instruments, stitched sutures, trying to imagine alternatives. Could the atelier remake the gown in time? Could I afford a second mortgage to pay for it? Could I walk down the aisle in a white lab coat instead? With every plan, I pictured Verity twirling in, Tommy dressed like a magpie, flaunting someone else's silver spoon. Friday arrived, scented with wood smoke and the first chill that warns Britain that summer is retreating. Caleb drove because my hands trembled too badly to trust the steering wheel. The Pembroke Hotel rose from the high street like a limestone cathedral to indulgence. Uplights grazing the columns, valets gliding like butlers from a period drama. Inside, the ballroom ceiling soared, a sky of molded plaster from which chandeliers dripped in tears. A string quartet played Vivaldi's Autumn with ironic flourish. My heels clicked across parquet that seemed polished with other women's tears. Guests orbited in gowns of jewel satin and velvet dinner jackets, toasting the kind of love stories that fit inside highlight reels. I scanned every circle of light for a flash of crepe and lace. Then I saw her. Verity stood on the dais beside a champagne tower, backlit by candles so that the halo around her hair looked almost ecclesiastical. She laughed at something Damien whispered and threw her head back, throat arched in effortless elegance, and she was wearing Twain my wedding dress. Not a replica, not a simplified homage. Tom's mine. The illusion sleeves, the seed pearl buttons, even the tiny imperfect stitch at the waist where Mum had repaired a loose thread last visit. All of it molded to Verity's figure like fate had rewoven itself for her. The only difference, she had added a silk sash of palest gold around the middle, brazen as a victory flag. The air left my lungs. Sound and color funneled into a tunnel that ended at the small gap between her shoulder blades. I could see the blush of her skin through my lace. I wondered whether the fabric remembered me. Mum noticed me before Verity did. She came flitting through the crowd, clutching a flute of Prosecco, breathless. Darling, don't fret. There wasn't time for alterations, so we pinned it. It's perfectly safe. After tonight, it's back in the bag, fresh as snowfall. She reached out to smooth a strand of my hair, but I stepped away. Something, maybe restraint, maybe the last filament of calm, snapped. I mounted the steps to the dais in a trance. Music and chatter fell underwater. Damien's smile froze mid-courtesy as he clocked my approach. Verity pivoted, skirts swirling like an advertisement for betrayal. Our eyes locked. Hers were bright with triumph and a flicker of uncertainty. She hadn't expected confrontation under chandelier light. My voice, when it came, was low and surgical. Take it off. She laughed, a silver bell dinging midnight. R.O., don't be dramatic. The photographer's about to do portraits. We'll swap later. She reached to squeeze my hand, sisterly, conciliatory. I pulled back. It isn't a prop, Verity. It's asterisk my promise to myself. Somewhere behind us, a waiter dropped a tray. Glasses shattered like celestial warning. The crowd hushed, faces tilting for drama the way flowers tilt for sun. Verity's jaw tightened. You're overreacting. It's not as if you're wearing it today. Share the spotlight for once. In that instant, I realized she believed her own narrative, that our lives were intertwined costumes she could swap at will, so long as the lighting stayed flattering. The unfairness tasted of copper on my tongue. I drew a breath that scraped my ribs and spoke louder than I meant to. You've mistaken my kindness for permission. I'm done being your fitting room. Take off the dress before you ruin more than the fabric. Damien stepped forward, voice oily with placation, saying we could resolve this like women of class, not tabloids. But the cluster of smartphones already pointed our way like telescopes promised otherwise. Someone's Instagram Live icon glowed crimson. Verity flushed, anger or embarrassment, and hissed, "You're making a scene." I replied, "No, sister, you dressed for it." For a heartbeat, the room balanced on a pin. Then the hotel's event manager hurried up the side steps, a tall woman in headset and clipboard armor. Security shadows loomed behind her, summoned by crackling earpiece. And that was when the chandelier directly above us flickered, dimmed, then burst back to full, scattering prisms like warning flares. In the kaleidoscopic glare, I saw Mum pressing a hand to her mouth. I saw Caleb weave through the crowd toward me, determination in every stride. I saw Verity's fingers clutch the gold sash as though holding onto her throne. But what I heard above the quartet's stutter, above the guests' whispers, was a single phrase forming in my mind like a verdict. You will not take what is mine without consequence. The decision to fight back settled into my bones with the cold precision of steel. The next words I spoke would change not just this party, not just my wedding, but the trajectory of our entire family story. I opened my mouth to deliver them, and the ballroom lights cut to black. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Kiss. The phantom of Caleb's goodnight kiss still warmed my cheek as I swung my legs over the edge of the mattress. Dawn trembled through the sheer curtains, like a timid guest, brushing hesitant gold across the hardwood. Somewhere on the next street, a lorry backfired, the sound startling a pair of pigeons from the windowsill planter. Their wings clattered, a gray-feathered applause that felt sardonic given how carefully I had planned for serenity on this particular Saturday. I padded into the ensuite, splashed water on my face, and studied the woman in the mirror. Rowena Callahan, 32, project manager by title, architect by obsession, usually began her weekend with slow coffee and quicker sketches, the pages of her leather notebook blooming with half-drawn atriums and improbable skylines. But today, my fingers fumbled the toothbrush like a scalpel over vital tissue, because this was the day my little sister Lorelai would announce her engagement. Officially, at least. Family whispers had rustled for weeks like reeds before a storm. How Logan Sinclair, the up-and-coming barrister with the Oxford pedigree and the financiers for parents, would certainly put a ring on her finger before All Hallows Eve. Lorelai, ever the performative darling, had accidentally left open tabs of diamond cuts on Mum's laptop, sent Pinterest boards to our aunts, and practiced her coy smile in every reflective surface short of puddles. I was happy for her, truly, or so I repeated like a commandment, but I could not ignore that tug at my ribs each time she basked in new admiration. She was the moon and high tide, the rest of us were ships scrambling to stay anchored. Still, sisters root for one another. I had promised to attend the soiree at Thorngate Manor, Logan's ancestral estate, though the invitation came in the form of a group text delivered at 3 a.m. Guess who's the newest fiancé? Party tonight at 7. Formal attire. Wear something that says legacy. Caleb leaned against the bathroom doorframe, dark hair tousled by dreams. You're up early for a Saturday. His voice had the husky warmth of a cello at dawn. Nerves, I admitted, turning off the tap. Mum will be there. Dad's flying in. The cousins. It's a whole Callahan-Sinclair summit masquerading as a party. He crossed the tiles, drew me into the familiar harbor of his arms. You'll be the most brilliant woman in the room, R.O. Lorelai shines, yes, but you've always been the Northern Star. I smiled into his t-shirt, privately cataloging the ways support like his made the cosmos less frigid. Flatterer. Architect of wonders, he corrected. Besides, tonight you'll look incredible in my dress, I finished, skin humming at the thought. Not just any dress. The ivory lace gown I had chosen for our postponed wedding. Pandemic turbulence had forced us to delay, then career tracks diverged, finances rerouted, And the dress, a Vera Wang sample I'd won at silent auction, languished in the cedar wardrobe, waiting for our calendars to align. I had decided last week to give it new purpose, hemming the train to T-length so it read cocktail rather than cathedral. Caleb squeezed my shoulders. You're certain you want to debut it now? I refuse to let sentimental ghosts dictate my closet. The fabric deserves fresh air. He nodded, though a flicker of something, concern, passed over his eyes. Then may all jaws drop. Quote, the morning unfurled in sequences. French press coffee inhaled while scanning punch-up notes for the Midtown Library renovation. Quick dash across Hammersmith Bridge for florist pickups. Lorelei adored white peonies and Logan preferred succulents, so I bought both, a compromise of textures. Then a pilgrimage to the hairdresser, who coaxed my chestnut waves into a low chignon flecked with baby's breath. By early afternoon, a group chat with the bridesmaids, I was not among them, formal announcement pending apparently, pinged nonstop with selfies. Lorelei's best friend, Astra, sent a boomerang of clinking champagne flutes. Bellinis at noon because, why not? Another message revealed pastel satin hangers bearing gowns of blush and sage. My phone buzzed like a hornet. I muted the thread. At 3:30, Caleb kissed my temple and left for his shift at the studio. He was editing a documentary and promised to join the party by 8. I stood alone in our loft, that renovated biscuit factory we loved for its exposed brick and misaligned windows, and zipped myself into the Vera Wang. The bodice hugged my ribs with a promise. You are enough. I took the tube to South Kensington, then switched to a minicab for the final stretch into Surrey's emerald lanes. Thorngate Manor surfaced beyond wrought iron gates, its limestone facade glowing honey in the late-day sun. Strings of lights zigzagged the courtyard. Mason jars of blossoms hung like lanterns. A live quartet tuned instruments beneath a marquee. It was all aggressively enchanting. I persuaded my lungs to keep rhythm, stepped onto the gravel drive, and presented my invite to the event planner stationed at the entrance. She scanned her iPad, smiled politely, and waved me through. Easy. Inside, the foyer was a crush of relatives, colleagues, and society columnists sniffing for column inches. I navigated past a cluster of uncles debating the new FTSE forecast, toward the cloakroom to stow my coat. That's when I heard an unmistakable squeal. Rowena! I pivoted, and there she was. Lorelei Callahan, 28 PR strategist turned influencer, wearing my dress. Not a replica. Not an inspired piece. My Vera Wang, down to the scalloped sweetheart neckline and the tiny pearl buttons I had painstakingly reinforced by hand. Her blonde hair cascaded in Hollywood curls, and she had pinned a diamond barrette, our grandmother's, at her temple. The dress fit her as though bespoke, though she lacked the slight curve at the hip where the tailor had nipped mine. For an infinite second, the room descended into silence, the sort found in open chapels where something sacred just fractured. My first instinct was disbelief. The sequence between retina and recognition glitched. Then, heat. A pulse of indignation so pure it tasted of iron. Lorelei tottered over in stilettos, arms outstretched. Surprise! Do you Louvre? Her blue eyes glimmered, unaware or uninterested in the grenade she'd pulled. This is my wedding dress, I managed, voice a glacier's edge. Behind us, conversations resumed, oblivious. She waved a manicured hand. Technically, it was hanging in storage. You weren't using it. And it is so last season to let gorgeous fabric wilt in a garment bag. How did you even? Caleb, let me borrow your spare keys when I said I wanted to leave you flowers. Caleb? The syllables cracked. He would never willingly betray me. But Lorelei possessed Olympic-level persuasion, her gold medal event being feigned innocence. I inhaled, bracing against a swell of nausea. My heart hammered a courtroom rhythm. Evidence, motive, verdict. Lorelei linked her arm through mine, oblivious to my stiff posture. Come on, sis. This night is about joy. I'll arrange for the gown to be steamed afterward. Unless, she trailed off, noticing at last the volcanic pressure under my skin. Rowena, you're not actually upset, are you? Before I could answer, Logan appeared, a tall silhouette in midnight blue tux, face glowing with triumph. He kissed Lorelai's hand, laid another on my shoulder. Rowena, you look radiant. Your support means the world. Support. The word ringed hollow. I excused myself, heartbeat ricocheting against my ribs, and slipped into the nearest powder room. Bolt locked, I pressed trembling palms to the marble countertop and stared at my reflection. Same dress, two different histories overlaying like ghosted blueprints. My cheeks flamed. Tears threatened but refused to fall, damned by anger. My phone vibrated. A notification from Caleb. Running late. Render glitch. Save me a dance. Love you. Did he know? Had Lorelai told him her intentions? Curling around that question was another. Did she intend malice, or was this merely Lorelai's exuberant narcissism? The distinction was thin comfort. I typed a curt reply, urgent talk later, then slipped the device into my clutch. When I returned to the foyer, a photographer beckoned guests onto the grand staircase for formal portraits. A staff member guided me to the second row. Lorelai and Logan ascended to the top, their joined hands raised as though pre-blessed by paparazzi. Flashbulbs popped. Applause thundered. I tasted copper. During cocktail hour, I navigated among canapes and polite small talk, each compliment on my dress a paper cut. I deflected with nods. Lorelai, ever magnetized by spotlights, flitted from circle to circle, dress swirling like a tethered comet. She never looked back. As dusk settled, the party moved to the garden pavilion for speeches. Crystal chandeliers hovered under the marquee, reflecting rows of white chairs. I found a seat at the aisle's edge. The MC, a slick-haired friend of Logan, cracked jokes, then invited Mr. Sinclair to speak. The patriarch stepped up, delivered a toast dense with lineage and expectation. More applause. Then Lorelai tapped the mic. "Thank you, everyone," she chirped. "This day is a dream, but it wouldn't be complete without my sister, my mentor, Rowena," she gestured at me. "Stand, R.O." 100 faces pivoted. The spotlight pinned me. I rose slowly, spine like steel rods. "My sister gave me something invaluable tonight," Lorelai continued, voice quivering with theatrical emotion. "She lent me courage. She lent me history. And she lent me," she twirled, "this incredible gown as a symbol that love should never stay boxed up." The crowd AWW-ed. Lorelai beamed. "So raise your glasses to sharing what matters most." Champagne flutes clinked. Cameras flashed. In the blur, I saw my parents, seated front row. Mum dabbed a tear. Dad nudged her, proud. Neither had ever seen the dress in person. They assumed I'd offered it. The speech ended. Music rose. Couples drifted toward the dance floor. I remained standing, heart riotous. Logan strode over. "Everything all right?" "Peachy," I lied. The air stank of lilies and white lies. I fled to the back lawn, where manicured hedges muffled the string quartet. Cool night air slapped my cheeks. Stars winked complicitly. I exhaled a breath that felt like surrender, and heard footsteps behind me. Lorelai. She leaned against a stone balustrade, moonlight silvering her curls. "Rowena, I know that look. Talk to me." The reservoir burst. "You stole my wedding dress." "I borrowed it." "Without asking. That's theft." Her jaw tightened. "You're being dramatic." I barked a laugh. "Dramatic? Lorelai, this dress symbolizes promises Caleb and I made. You turned it into a prop." She crossed her arms. "You postponed that wedding twice. Honestly, I thought you'd abandoned it. Maybe subconsciously you didn't want it. Even if that were true, you should have asked." She huffed. "I'm apologizing, there." "No, you're justifying." I stepped closer. "Return the dress today. Have it couriered to my flat by morning." She hesitated. "It's complicated." My eyes narrowed. "Complicated how?" Her gaze flicked to the house. "I may have told Logan it was mine. He paid for alterations." "Alterations? You cut it?" My voice cracked, brittle as thin ice. "Only the bodice. And the hem. It suits me better." Blood roared in my ears. "You destroyed my property." "Enhancement, R.O. I'm offering to buy it from you." I took a step back, registering the abyss yawning between us. It's not for sale. Lorelei sighed, impatience sharpening her features. Look, I can have a replica made for you. Better yet, when you and Caleb actually set a date, I'll finance an entirely new gown, designer of your choice. I stared, stunned by her nonchalance. This isn't about money. Everything's about money, she whispered, voice suddenly cold. It's the only language people hear. A gust rattled the hedges. Somewhere inside, the DJ switched from classical to an Ed Sheeran ballad, Lorelei's favorite. She straightened, smoothing invisible wrinkles from the gown. I need to dance with my fiancé. Can we revisit this conversation tomorrow? Something in me calcified. Yes, I said. Tomorrow and every day after, until this is resolved. Fine. She pivoted, the train sweeping dew-damp grass and floated back toward glowing chandeliers. I inhaled night air, exhaled resolve. Legal terms flickered through memory. Ownership, tort conversion, damages. A summer internship at a legal aid office had left me with dusty but serviceable knowledge. If Lorelei refused to rectify, I could sue, and win. But lawsuits cut families apart. Did I want battle lines etched in court filings? Then I recalled Dad's toast at my 13th birthday. A Callahan keeps her word and protects what's hers. I turned the phrase over like a coin. The dress was more than satin. It was a vow. And Lorelei had stripped it without consent. I opened my clutch, pulled out my phone, and scrolled contacts until I found Marina Holt, once my study partner, now a solicitor specializing in personal property. I typed, emergency consultation, sibling dress dispute. Are you available Sunday? The message marked as sent. I pocketed the device, squared my shoulders, and re-entered the pavilion. The night blurred, the laughter, the clinking glass, the swirl of stolen lace. I engaged autopilot, thanked the caterers, hugged relatives, dodged Logan's inquisitive gaze. Caleb arrived near 10. Cheeks flushed from sprinting. He kissed me hello, froze when he saw Lorelei across the dance floor. Isn't that? Yes, I clipped. We'll talk later. He studied my face, recognition dawning. Oh, R.O. I squeezed his hand. Not tonight. At midnight, fireworks erupted over the Manor Lake, mirrored explosions painting water with reckless color. Guests cheered, champagne overflowed. Under the cacophony, I slipped away, flagged a black cab, and watched Thorngate's turrets shrink in the rear window. Home was dark. I hung my coat, collapsed onto the sofa, and let the silence settle like ash. My phone pinged. Lorelei, thank you for coming, Redheart. You're a star. I didn't reply. At 2 a.m, another message. A photo. Lorelei and Logan on the dance floor, her head on his shoulder, the dress luminous under fairy lights. Under it, her caption, Fate always dresses us in the story we deserve. My stomach lurched. Anger morphed into clarity. I walked to the wardrobe, opened the door where the garment bag once hung. Empty. A small satin sachet of cedar chips dangled like an epitaph. I whispered to the emptiness, you deserve better. Sunday dawned gray. Caleb brewed coffee, but avoided commentary. I drafted a timeline of events while the news played muted in the background. At 10, Marina replied, Consult today 3 p.m. Chambers. Bring documentation. Documentation. I collected the original purchase receipt, alteration forms, and a series of photos. My first fitting, my friend's tears of joy, snapshots from my postponed wedding date, each image embedding more weight into paper. At noon, Mum called. Darling, your sister's engagement was magical. Thank you for sacrificing your gown so generously. I closed my eyes. Did Lorelei tell you I offered it? She said you insisted. Such love between sisters. My pulse hammered. Mum, she lied. I recounted the theft. Mum's responses devolved into gasps, deflections, and finally, Rowena, don't make a scene. A dress is just a dress. No, I said, voice hard. It was a promise. Mum sighed. Family reputation matters more than cloth. Let it go. Let it go. The phrase ignited steel in my spine. I can't. We hung up, tension crackling through dead air. 3 o'clock, I sat opposite Marina in a book-lined office smelling of parchment and eucalyptus. She read through my file, brow furrowing. "Plenty to stand on," she murmured, tapping a clause. "Unauthorized alteration of property converts it to civil theft. You're entitled to replacement value and damages for emotional distress." I exhaled, equal parts relief and dread. If we file, it'll devastate Thanksgiving. Marina met my gaze. "What do you want, R.O.?" My answer surprised both of us. I want her to understand consequence. And I want closure. "Drafting a claim will deliver a formal shock." She slid a templated form across the desk. "We could serve notice tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word vibrated like tectonic plates shifting. I imagined Lorelei opening a sleek envelope, her manicured confidence cracking. Marina placed a pen in my hand. "Your call." Ink flowed, signature etched. Thunder rolled somewhere distant. That night I stood by the window, rain lacing London's skyline, Caleb's arm around my waist. "Are you certain?" he asked. "I'm done being the gracious sister. I'm done letting her rewrite my story." He kissed my temple. Silence enveloped us, broken only by fresh thunder. Lightning flashed, and in the strobing white, I saw my reflection against the glass, fierce and unyielding. The summons would be delivered at 8 a.m. I pictured Lorelei opening the door, still wrapped in satin illusions, only to receive a different kind of gown, the black-lettered robe of accountability. I whispered, "Tomorrow begins." And in answer, the city's skyline flickered, as though all of London braced for the collision of stitched secrets and sisterly war. Somewhere across town, Lorelei posed in front of her vanity, rehearsing how the dress would look on the courthouse steps, blissfully unaware that the next time she wore white under bright lights, it would be under oath. Dress. The single, severed syllable hovered in the charged silence, a gossamer thread still tethering me to the life I'd imagined before Lysandra's betrayal rewove the pattern of my future into barbed knots. I completed the word aloud, dress. It escaped as a rasp, a quiet reclamation, and then the ballroom detonated with whispers. Eyes darted between Lysandra and me, as if tracking an unpredictable serve at Wimbledon. She twisted in the stolen gown, my gown, its ivory silk sighing over the parquet floor like a guilty confession. The square neckline I had chosen to honor our late grandmother's Edwardian lace collar now framed Lysandra's smirking clavicles. My breath snagged in my chest, the boning of my bodice, so lovingly altered to my exact measurements, strained against a body it was never meant to hold. In the gilded mirrors behind the bar, I saw us juxtaposed. The woman I was, hair disheveled, bridesmaid blue cocktail dress clinging like a bruise, and the woman she pretended to be, luminous beneath the chandeliers, draped in my stolen tomorrow. A clatter of crystal punctured the hush. Caleb, positioned by the drinks table, had set his champagne flute down so fast the stem snapped clean. Bubbles fizzed across his cufflinks, but his gaze, storm gray and growing darker, never left Lysandra. A pulse of something fierce flickered in me. Relief that he was as furious as I, terror of what fury might do. "Rowena," he murmured, voice pitched low for my ears alone. "Wait." His hand found mine, anchoring me. Public spectacle helps her. Think. The word uncoiled like a lifeline. My sister thrived on drama. Rage would feed her. Strategy, however, tasted foreign to her tongue. I inhaled through my nose, drawing in the mingled scents of lilac arrangements, catering kitchen truffle oil, and something acrid, that faint copper tang of betrayal that lingered like a pollutant. I exhaled slow, letting calculation settle over me like a veil. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lysandra's voice rang crystal bright. Difficult to fathom that a tone so bell-like could slice skin. My darling Armand proposed only THR. Stop. The single word cracked across the hush. To my shock, it was Caleb who had spoken, his barrister's timbre echoing like a judge's gavel. "This celebration is cancelled." A gasp rippled through the gathering. I watched color drain from Lysandra's cheeks, replaced by mottled anger. Her fiancé, Armand Leclerc, heir to a Midlands gin fortune, stiffened beside her, glancing between us like a novice referee. I stepped forward, releasing Caleb's hand. My heels tapped a deliberate tempo, the click of each stride an audible countdown. When I stopped before my sister, an arm's length separated us, but decades of rivalry yawned vaster. "Take it off," I said. Laughter, brittle as snapped reeds. "You can't be serious." "Take it off." Each syllable landed with the weight of a contractual clause. I saw Armand flinch. Lysandra lifted her chin. "It isn't your dress once I've altered it. Possession, dear sister, is 9/10. Then you'll want the remaining 10th prepared to testify." My voice was butter smooth. "Because I own the design, the tailors signed affidavits, and a photographic chain of custody. Congratulations, you've committed intellectual property theft, fraud, and emotional distress. Shall we add slander when I publish how you mocked a charity auction to fund orphan scholarships?" Her painted lips parted, words stalling. I continued, softer, yet every guest leaned closer. "Return what you stole, Lysandra, and apologize to this room, or I will file an injunction so fast your engagement will occur in depositions." A muscle jumped at her jaw. For one flicker of a heartbeat, she looked a child again, caught pilfering biscuits. Then her eyes hardened. "No." The refusal struck me like cold water. I expected capitulation. Instead, she pivoted, hitching the skirt to dash. But Caleb was faster, blocking her path with a legal presence honed in the Queen's Bench Division. "Move," she hissed. "Of course," he replied. Right after security photographs the contraband, he signaled the event photographer, who raised his camera uncertainly. Flashes bloomed, freezing Lysandra mid-flight, the stolen gown bright as exposed bone. Guests murmured, phones emerged. Social media's jaws yawned wide. Scandal would travel at light speed. My sister's face blanched as the truth dawned. The court of public opinion would reach verdict before any solicitor. Armand spoke at last, a tremor of embarrassment fraying his French-Etonian accent. "Lise, ma chérie, perhaps we should—" "Shut up!" She whipped toward him, desperation stripping her poise. The room recoiled. I felt Caleb's presence at my side again, his palm hovering near my back in silent support. It was in that instant, before the witnesses of London society, that Lysandra made her fatal error. She seized the skirt, ripped a swath of beaded lace from the hem, and hurled it at me. "Here's your precious dress!" Gasps crescendoed into uproar. The tear in the silk was jagged, threads dangling like severed nerves. A visceral pain zigzagged through me, but beneath it thrummed icy clarity. This, captured on dozens of phones, transformed her petty theft into willful destruction of property. Caleb spoke, his tone lethal calm. "That's criminal damage." I swallowed sorrow, tasted resolve, and we'll see it repaired on her dime. The night dissolved in a blur of statements, hushed condolences, and the susurrus of parted velvet drapes as guests slipped away. Caleb shepherded me to a waiting car, away from the Goppers, away from Lysandra's shrieking accusation that I had, quote, ruined her happiest day. But the humiliated sob I heard as the door slammed belonged not to her, it was my own. She wore my future. The car's leather scent mingled with my tears as we drove through Westminster's lamplit streets. Caleb's hand enveloped mine, thumb circling my knuckles. A silent promise. "We will make this right." "Rowena," his voice when it came was gentle but edged with purpose. "We need to decide how far you want to take this legally. A claim for damages is straightforward, but if you want restitution beyond the gown—" "I want accountability," I whispered. "Every lie, every manipulation. I'm tired of being her collateral damage." He nodded once, decisive. "Then we'll file for a civil remedy first thing tomorrow. And if she contests, we disclose the entire pattern of abuse." I closed my eyes, exhaustion rolling over me. Yet beneath it coiled a steadfast spark. This would not end in meek apologies. It would end in a courtroom where truth could not be mocked. Morning unfurled, gray and damp, a London drizzle that smeared the horizon like wet newsprint. I arrived at the chambers wearing a navy suit Caleb had once called my armor. The receptionist's sympathetic smile followed me to the conference room, where our legal strategy awaited. Caleb had prepared a thick binder labeled Callahan versus Callahan. Seeing my maiden name split by the stark time asterisk stirred a pang, Family at war. Yet I flipped the cover. Exhibits. Tailor receipts, email chains, CCTV stills from the boutique showing Lysandra signing as me, social media posts timestamped to her engagement, and the pièce de résistance, high-definition photographs of the damaged gown taken by the event photographer, watermarked and logged. We have standing, Caleb assured, and public sympathy. She'll likely settle quickly to avoid trial. A knock interrupted. His secretary peeked in, eyes wide. There's been a development. We followed her to Caleb's office, where a live news feed played on his monitor. Asterisk Daily View asterisk headline blared. Asterisk Society bride accused of theft, engagement party meltdown goes viral. Asterisk ace beneath a still of Lysandra mid-rip, face contorted, hands clutching torn silk. My stomach lilted. Caleb clicked volume. The anchor summarized. Sources confirm Rowena Callahan, respected philanthropist architect, intends legal action. While Ms. Callahan could not be reached. A buzz from my phone. Unknown number, I answered cautiously. Rowena? It's Armand, his voice quavered. Please, may we meet? Lysandra is not herself. She's talking about destroying more evidence. I think she'll do something drastic. I felt the floor tilt. Where are you? The Royal Crescent Hotel, Suite 711. Hurry, please. I ended the call. Caleb's brow furrowed at my recounting. It could be a trap, he warned. Or a witness ready to testify, I countered. Either way, I have to go. He studied me, conflict flickering. Then, I'm coming with you. The Royal Crescent's marble foyer glimmered under chandeliers older than the suffragette movement. We rode a gilded lift to the 7th floor, its mirrored walls reflecting my calm facade, masking the tempest beneath. Suite 711's door opened before we knocked. Armand stood pale, his tailored jacket rumpled. He ushered us inside where luggage lay overturned, garments strewn like storm debris. On the sofa, Lysandra knelt over a coffee table scattered with scissors, seam rippers, and what remained of my wedding gown, shredded into ribbons. She looked up, eyes wild. Now no one can have it. I stared, words vaporizing. The destruction was total. Beads glistened like tears across the carpet. Lys, Armand's plea trembled. She rose, brandishing scissors. Caleb stepped forward, protective, but I lifted a hand. Stay back. Her gaze locked on me. You always thought you were better, but you'll walk down the aisle in tatters. Something inside me stilled, a lake, freezing smooth. That dress was a symbol, Lysandra, but I'm still the bride. Not without a gown, she laughed, unhinged. I inhaled. Then I'll design a new one. But you've cut more than silk. You've severed every chance of mercy. Her expression faltered. I reached into my bag, produced an envelope. This is a notice of impending civil action. You're being served. Caleb handed it to her fiancé, who accepted with shaking hands. Lysandra scoffed, tossed the scissors. Blade clanged against crystal, and crossed her arms. Sue me. I'll countersue for defamation. You should read Clause 7, Caleb said softly. It outlines mandatory discovery, including financial disclosures. The jewelry Armand gifted, your trust fund expenditures, they become public record. Silence thudded. Armand's eyes widened at me, anguish blooming. Rowena, is that true? I nodded. I wish it weren't. Lysandra turned feral. You can't scare me with paperwork. No, I agreed, but the truth might. I held up my phone, thumb poised over an unposted video of her ripping the gown. This goes live if you don't cooperate. Her bravado fissured, shoulders sagged. What do you want? Justice, I might have said, but a deeper voice within whispered. Liberation. An apology before the court, I answered. Restitution to the charity auction equal to the original gown's value tripled. And counseling, documented, for compulsive behavior. Caleb added, plus legal fees. Lysandra's eyes brimmed, rage diluted by fear. Finally, she nodded once, brittle. Then we file a consent order, Caleb concluded. The days that followed, compressed into a maelstrom of solicitor conferences, wardrobe consultations, my new gown commissioned from a Parisian atelier, and a surprising string of supportive messages from strangers moved by the viral debacle. Yet not all was victory. Tabloids feasted on family carnage, and Mum's panicked calls demanded I withdraw. For the family name. Forley refused. But as the court date neared, an unexpected letter arrived on engraved stationery bearing the crest of the High Court. Inside was not the expected scheduling notice but a summons. Lysandra had petitioned the court to dismiss, alleging emotional coercion by me and Caleb. Worse, she sought a protective order barring me from publicizing the video. I stared at the document, my pulse hammering. Caleb read over my shoulder, expression darkening. "She's trying to flip the narrative," he said. "Paint you as the abuser." A chill crawled my spine. Can she succeed? Not with the evidence we possess, but we need to counter fast. He paced, then stopped, resolve blazing. "Rowena, there's one route to shut this down entirely. Counterpetition for summary judgment. We present irrefutable proof. Ask the judge to decide on the filings without trial. But if the judge refuses, then we proceed to full trial and everything becomes spectacle." I swallowed. The media circus was already savage. A protracted trial would shred what remained of privacy. I met his eyes. "Do it. File the motion." Quote. He nodded, already reaching for his laptop. As his fingers flew over keys, I felt the ground under me shift again. The battle was far from over. The morning of the motion hearing dawned cold, the Thames veiled in pewter fog. Outside the Royal Courts of Justice, reporters thronged behind barricades like ravens awaiting carrion. Caleb and I exited the car into a storm of shudders. In the foyer's echoing marble, we passed through security and into the courtroom where oak pews creaked beneath spectators' weight. At the petitioner's table sat Lysandra, impossibly demure in dove gray, her counsel whispering. The clerk called the case. We stood. The judge, a silver-haired woman with eyes sharp as cut glass, reviewed the filings. Caleb presented our exhibits with clipped precision: video footage, affidavits, financial audits. Lysandra's counsel objected, claiming, quote, strategic humiliation. The judge's raised brow silenced him. Then Lysandra took the stand. Her testimony dripped rehearsed vulnerability. Rowena manipulated me. Roko science. Roko science. Lament marl mayan dax. Lament science. Mayan science. Lament mind, nyon science. Marl mayan science. Lament mayans. I felt each lie land like a hammer on glass, yet the judge listened, inscrutable. Caleb's cross-examination sliced through her narrative, but Lysandra parried with tears. At last, Caleb played the unedited video, her ripping the gown, screaming. The courtroom held its breath. When the clip ended, the judge asked only, "Ms. Callahan, is that you in the recording?" Lysandra's mascara dark lashes fluttered. "Yes." "No further questions," Caleb said. Closing arguments concluded, the judge adjourned for decision. We waited, hearts thundering. 20 minutes later, she returned. Verdict crisp. Summary judgment for the respondent. Our motion granted. Damages to be determined at a later date. Protective order denied. Relief crashed over me like surf. I exhaled a laugh that was half sob. But the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, she declared, the court hereby orders mediation between the parties to negotiate terms of restitution, to be completed within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in contempt proceedings. Lysandra blanched. Mediation meant facing me without theatrics. The gavel fell. Reporters sprang. Caleb squeezed my hand. "We won," he breathed. "Not yet," whispered the doubt in my chest. Victories could erode. Mediation convened in a glass-walled office overlooking St. Paul's. A neutral facilitator, a silver-bearded man who smelled faintly of bergamot, greeted us. Lysandra arrived last, flanked by counsel, eyes swollen but defiant. The session began civilly. Caleb proposed restitution figures. Her counsel countered absurdly low. Hours ticked, voices frayed. At dusk's edge, the facilitator suggested a break. Lysandra and I found ourselves alone at the coffee station, the city's amber lights reflecting in the window like floating embers. She sipped water, avoiding my gaze. "Why are you doing this?" I answered softly, "Because someone has to stop the cycle." Her shoulders sagged. "I never meant to hurt you this much." "Yet you did." She closed her eyes. "I don't know why I can't stand when you're happy." The confession sliced deeper than any insult. I set my cup down. "Liz, envy is a wound that infects the one who bears it." She looked at me, tears brimming. "Help me then." Hope flickered, fragile. "Start by taking responsibility." Back at the table, Lysandra's counsel began another objection, but she lifted a hand, silencing him. "I accept her terms," she said, voice husky. "Full restitution, apology in court, and I'll seek therapy." Stunned silence. The facilitator smiled faintly. Caleb scribbled revisions. Papers slid across for signatures. Pens scratched. Agreements crystallized. It was done. The final court appearance 2 weeks later was swift. Lysandra's apology, public, tearful, echoed through the high-vaulted chamber. The judge approved the consent order, commended our resolution, and banged the gavel. Reporters clustered outside. Flashes flared. Lysandra paused beside me on the steps, voice trembling. "Thank you for not destroying me." "I didn't save you," I replied. "You did that yourself." She nodded once, then descended toward waiting cameras. I watched, unsure what our future as sisters would hold, but feeling, for the first time, neither victim nor victor, simply free. Caleb appeared at my side. "Ready to go home?" I smiled. "Not yet." Because I had one more promise to keep, a wedding to plan, a new gown to unveil, and a love story to reclaim. Except as the chauffeur's engines rumbled and the evening breeze tugged at my hair, my phone vibrated. A notification. Incoming email from Leclerc Holdings Legal Department. Subject line. Tamam her tu minai dine. Tamam mail mer tu minai dine. Tamam mail mer tu minai dine. Tamam meritinai dine. Tamam mail meri dine. Tamam mail meritinai dine. Tamam mail meritinai dine. I frowned, opened it, and my pulse plummeted. Armand's lawyers accused Lysandra of fraudulent misrepresentation, seeking immediate nullification, and they wanted my cooperation as a witness, or else they would subpoena me. Caleb read over my shoulder, jaw tightening. "They're dragging you into their breakup." "I just got free," I whispered. He took my hand. "We'll face it together." My gaze drifted to the horizon where the last smear of sunset bled crimson, a warning flare in the sky. I realized the war was far from over. And this time the battleground would be a courtroom where Trace Lai wore her Nasmaya engagement gown as Exhibit A. The engines roared, the night swallowed the final ember of daylight, and somewhere inside me a new resolve ignited. I would not just defend my future, I would define it. To be continued. Define it. The phrase echoed inside me on a loop, a silent mantra pulsing to the rhythm of the cab's tires against the wet London asphalt. I would define my future, no matter how many fresh summonses materialized like dark ink specters on creamy stationery. Caleb's hand wrapped around mine in the back seat, grounding me amid the neon glare and paparazzi flashbursts ricocheting off the rain-sheened windows. My phone buzzed again. Another notification, another headline. Heir fiancé sues bride-to-be for fraud. Sister called as key witness. Beneath it, a thumbnail of me descending the court steps in my navy armor. I muted the device and exhaled, watching my breath ghost the glass, a transient fog I could wipe away. If only public opinion were that simple. "You still want to wear her engagement gown as evidence?" Caleb asked softly. I met his eyes in the reflected city lights. "Symbolism matters. She used my wedding dress to humiliate me. I'll use hers to illuminate the truth." He inclined his head, a barrister acknowledging a point well made. "I'll arrange secure custody of the gown as Exhibit A. Chain of evidence must be airtight." The cab slowed outside our flat. From the pavement, a cluster of reporters surged, bulbs popping like gunfire. Caleb shielded me with his coat as we hurried inside. The door slammed. Deadbolts slid, and the building's hush enfolded us. In the foyer mirror, I caught sight of my reflection, mascara blurred by drizzle, hair escaping its chignon, yet iron steadiness in my gaze I barely recognized. Perhaps this was what becoming unbreakable looked like. Not polished perfection, but fractured edges soldered with resolve. "Tea?" Caleb offered. I managed to smile. "Champagne. We deserve at least a toast to partial victories." He fetched flutes and a chilled bottle left over from what should have been our wedding eve celebration. The cork sighed free with a soft pop. He poured and we clinked glasses. "To defining the future," he said. I sipped crisp effervescence. "And to not letting it define us." 1 week later. The rhythm of preparation consumed me. Affidavits to draft, depositions to schedule, a new gown's final fitting, and endless PR triage to keep my architectural firm's reputation intact. Yet nights remained sleepless. I would lie beside Caleb, listening to his measured breathing, while headlines pulsed behind my eyelids. On the 6th night without rest, I padded into the kitchen at 3 a.m. and opened the sketchbook I kept for emergency designs. Graphite met paper, lines unfurled, a sweeping cathedral-length train, asymmetrical drape, hand-embroidered crescent moon motifs in silver thread, an echo of the October dawn that had once felt bridal. I sketched until dawn's first blush smeared the skyline, until exhaustion finally granted mercy. When I woke, a note rested atop the closed sketchbook, breathtaking. "Let's make it real. See?" A single scarlet rose lay beside it. Love could be quiet yet invincible. Pre-mediation strategy meeting, Leclerc versus Callahan. Caleb and I sat across from Armand's lead counsel, Henrietta Street. John, a formidable litigator known for dismantling reputations with silk-gloved hands. Armand himself appeared gaunt, cheeks hollowed by scandal. He avoided my gaze, shame coiling around him like cigar smoke. Henrietta tapped a binder. "My client seeks annulment on grounds of fraudulent concealment. We allege Ms. Lysandra Callahan misrepresented both her financial solvency and her intention to honor prenuptial agreements." I folded my hands. "You'll need me to testify about her spending habits and pattern of deceit." "Precisely," Henrietta said. "We understand the emotional burden, Ms. Callahan. You have our gratitude." Her gratitude felt transactional but necessary. "I'll testify truthfully." Caleb added, "We'll require a narrowed scope. Rowena's personal life is not a circus for counsel to exploit." Henrietta's painted mouth curved. "Agreed." The meeting adjourned, but outside the mahogany-paneled conference room, Armand touched my sleeve. "Merci. She frightened me. I loved her, but I could never predict her next cruelty." Quote. I searched his weary eyes. "People can change, but only if they want to." He nodded, tears glinting. "Bon courage, Rowena." The engagement gown. The following day, Caleb and I arrived at the evidence facility to take custody of Lysandra's gown. It hung in a climate-controlled chamber, pale blush tulle cascading over a linen-wrapped mannequin. Tiny seed pearls sparkled beneath fluorescent light, innocent of the chaos the dress had cloaked. Seeing it, my stomach twisted. Once it had seemed romantic. Now I could only picture Lysandra's mocking twirl across parquet, the way chandeliers scattered light across betrayal. The technician sealed it in an acid-free garment bag, documenting each stage. Chain of custody forms signed, we departed with the dress that would anchor my testimony. In the car, I ran fingertips over the cool plastic. Strange how fabric can carry so much weight. Caleb squeezed my knee. "Soon it'll carry justice." Tabloid siege TASS. Justice, however, seldom travels alone. The tabloids intensified, dredging family skeletons with glee. One morning, an article surfaced claiming Caleb only pursued me to secure high-profile cases. A baseless smear citing anonymous chamber sources. Another insinuated my architectural contracts were awarded through nepotism, not merit. I slammed the printout onto Caleb's desk. "This is character assassination." He massaged his temples. "They're trying to rattle us before the hearing." "It's working," my voice cracked. He rose, enfolded me. "We answer with truth, not panic. But panic simmered nonetheless. Investors called, uneasy. My lead designer asked if we should step back from a municipal bid, lest scandal taint the project. I told her no, and spent the night drafting an open letter defending our firm's integrity. It trended on LinkedIn within hours, a ripple of professional support, countering tabloid tides. Yet personal costs accrued silently, like interest on a loan. I missed Mum's birthday lunch because paparazzi staked out her cottage. My maid of honor, Grace, postponed my bridal shower, and every time my phone vibrated, I braced for fresh anguish. ###, therapy session, Onmond. In court-mandated counseling, Lysandra confronted demons she'd long accessorized with designer handbags. Through my solicitor, I received updates. She wept, recounting childhood competitions, admitted forging my signature at the boutique, confessed envy. Hearing this, my anger morphed, still sharp yet alloyed with sorrow. The counselor requested a joint session. Caleb advised caution, but I agreed. We met in a serene room, scented with lavender. Lysandra entered, eyes rimmed red but lucid. She sat opposite, fingers twisting a tissue. "I'm sorry," she began, voice ragged. "For the dress. For the years before that, I hated the mirror you held up to my failures." Emotions surged, but I kept tone steady. I never wanted a mirror, only a sister. Tears spilled. "Will you ever trust me again?" Trust. A word like fragile crystal. Trust is built, Lise. I'm willing to start with honesty. She nodded, relief trembling. In that room, we stitched the first hesitant seam toward reconciliation. ### grand jury leak. 2 days before the annulment hearing, an anonymous leak surfaced. Evidence files, supposedly sealed, appeared on a gossip site. Scanned depositions, my joint session notes, even preliminary sketches of my new gown. Public outrage reignited. Caleb stormed into my office, phone in hand. This compromise could invalidate the case. Who would leak? My pulse pounded. He inhaled. Someone with access, court staff, or... He hesitated. Your sister's counsel. I closed my eyes. We need protective orders. Immediate. He nodded, already dialing. Hours later, the judge issued a stern reprimand and an inquiry into the breach. But damage done. My private words with Lise hovered online, stripped of context, weaponized. That night, I couldn't eat. Caleb found me on the balcony, city lights swimming like drowned stars. You're allowed to be weary, he murmured. I wiped tears. What if there's nothing left of me by the time this ends? He turned me to face him, palms cupping my cheeks. Rowena Callahan, you are more than dresses and lawsuits. They can't strip your essence. His certainty soothed like balm. I leaned into him, breathing steady. Below us, sirens wailed, a reminder the world spun indifferent to my turmoil. ### annulment hearing, day 1. Courtroom 3 felt colder than the others. Perhaps a trick of nerves. Armand's counsel presented meticulous evidence. Bank statements, text messages, Lysandra's forged signatures. I testified regarding her history, the borrowed designer pieces she forgot to return, the charity pledges unpaid, the manipulation witnessed. Mid-afternoon recess approached. My voice trembled, throat raw from hours on the stand, yet one more exhibit remained, the engagement gown. Bailiffs brought the garment bag. Caleb unzipped it with ceremonious care. Gasps murmured as the blush dress emerged, luminous. I described how Lysandra flaunted it the night of the engagement, how she mocked my wedding gown. I emphasized symbolism, one sister's appropriation, the other's reclamation. Opposing counsel objected. Judge overruled. The gown was admitted. Recess declared. As I stepped down, Lysandra caught my eye. Her expression was devastation, wrought human, but she mouthed 2 words. Thank you. I inclined my head. Acknowledgement, not absolution. In the corridor, journalists shouted. Caleb ushered me to a side hallway, pressing a water bottle into my hand. You did brilliantly. I feel like I've aged 10 years. He kissed my temple. I'll fetch the car. Alone, I leaned against the paneled wall, heartbeat loosening. A low voice drifted from around the corner. Henrietta Street, John on the phone. Yes, the leak served its purpose. Public sympathy secured, jury sentiment tilting. Tomorrow we pivot to settlement talks. Callahan will fold once her brand bleeds. My stomach plunged. Henrietta orchestrated the leak to leverage me. Adrenaline spiked. I stepped back, floorboard creaking. Her voice paused. The conversation ended. I turned to leave, but she appeared, eyes narrowing. Eavesdropping is poor etiquette, she purred. I straightened. Leaking sealed documents is criminal. Her smile was razor thin. Prove it. She swept past, heels clicking like a metronome counting down disaster. # night strategy. That evening, Caleb and I convened with our cybercrime investigator, Priya Patel, no relation, in our living room strewn with case files. Priya tapped her laptop. Metadata on the leaked scans ties back to an IP registered to St. John and Associates. Timestamp matches after-hours access. Caleb exhaled. We can file a motion for sanctions. Priya nodded. And I'll secure server logs before they vanish. A plan crystallized. Sanctions, mistrial motion, and an ethics complaint to the bar. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. ###. Sanctions, motion. Next morning, Caleb filed the emergency motion. Court buzzed like a beehive struck. Henrietta feigned outrage, but the judge's glare could have frozen magma. Within hours, an evidentiary hearing commenced. Priya presented digital forensics. Path clear. Leak originated within Henrietta's firm. Judge suspended her, referred matter to disciplinary board, and recessed to consider mistrial. Henrietta's removal shifted battlefield terrain. Armand's secondary counsel scrambled. Lysandra's representation, an entirely different firm, moved to isolate themselves from the taint. I felt vindication, yet dread. A mistrial could reset months of ordeal. That evening, Lysandra called. I hesitated, then answered. "Rowena," she whispered, "I didn't know about the leak, I swear." "I believe you." Silence then. "I want to fix this. Meet me tomorrow, alone. Noon, Street Bede's Chapel. You'll be in court. I'll waive appearance. There's something you need to see." Her tone carried gravity, not manipulation. Still, caution thrummed. "If it's about the case." "It's bigger," she interrupted. "Please." "It's bigger. # Dimda Street. Bede's Chapel." Built of soot-dark stone, the disused chapel crouched behind a row of plane trees, forgotten amid the city's glass spires. Noon's sun cast fractured beams through stained glass. Dust motes floated like tiny ghosts. Lysandra knelt before the altar rail, back to me. She rose as I approached, clutching a carved wooden box. "What is this?" I asked. "Evidence," she said, eyes solemn. "Not against you, against Henrietta. She blackmailed me to testify falsely if the annulment failed." My pulse quickened. Blackmail? With what? She opened the box. Inside lay an SD card and a stack of photographs. Caleb embracing a woman outside a restaurant, dated years ago. My chest constricted. "She said Caleb was unfaithful," Lysandra whispered. "And she had more, like financial records, implying he funded hush money. She threatened to leak them to ruin your marriage." Cold spread through me. The photos looked intimate. Caleb's face tender in candlelight, the woman's hand on his. I forced breath. "Why give these to me now?" "Because I won't be used anymore. And because you deserve truth." Tears glistened, even if it hurts. I stared at the images, world tilting. Could I believe my sister? Could I trust my fiancé? Lysandra touched my arm. "I'm so sorry." Footsteps behind me. I turned. Caleb stood at the doorway, eyes shadowed. "Rowena," he began, voice brittle. "I can explain." Air deserted my lungs. The chapel walls loomed, silence roaring. The box in my hands felt like a ticking bomb poised to obliterate everything I'd rebuilt. "Explain," I whispered, the single word cracking like ice. Caleb stepped forward, palms up. "Those photos are real, but they're not what they seem." Lysandra watched, stricken. My heart hammered. Trust teetered. Truth awaited. But would it save or shatter us? The answer would decide not only the trial, but the fate of my love, my future, and the sisterhood hanging by a thread. I inhaled the chapel's dusty air, bracing for revelation. To be continued. The subject line still pulsed at the top of my inbox, long after Caleb closed the car door behind us. Tmade, 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 screet. Tmade co, Tmade, made. Screed, Tmade, Tmade, Tmade co, demade made, Tmade, cooperation requested. While the driver merged into the twilight traffic on Fleet Street, each brake light flare strobing red across my screen like a silent alarm. The message might as well have been written in blood. Dear Ms. Callahan, pursuant to the dissolution proceedings of LeClaire versus Callahan, your testimony is essential. Essential. Because I alone could confirm Lysandra had misrepresented herself to Armand about finances, about fidelity, about everything. Caleb's knuckles whitened on the leather strap of his briefcase. We've barely extinguished one fire, he muttered, voice rough with fatigue. Now LeClaire intends to light another using you as the torch. I refuse to burn, I said, yet embers of dread fluttered in my chest. If I cooperated, I risked shattering what little remained of my parents' fragile neutral ground. If I refused, I faced subpoena, and perjury charges should I lie. We rode the remainder of the journey in pensive silence broken only by rain thrumming on the roof. When the cab rolled to a stop outside our flat, Caleb drew me close, his breath warm against my temple. We'll answer them, but on our terms. Tomorrow morning I'll draft a response demanding narrow scope and written interrogatories first. No fishing expedition. Relief uncoiled tight muscles I hadn't known were knotted. I pressed a kiss to his jaw. Thank you. But even as we climbed the stairwell, the confrontation to come chased me like a shadow. I thought of Lysandra, my sister, my adversary, destroying my gown ribbon by ribbon. Would she truly testify against me if I aided her ex-fiancé? Or would she implode, dragging us both beneath waves of scandal? Only dawn would tell. The morning brought a pewter sky and a stack of overnight deliveries. Among them lay a slim garment bag from Maison Valforte, the Parisian atelier crafting my new wedding gown. I ran trembling fingertips over the gold logo before unzipping the side. Inside hung a toile, an unbleached muslin mock-up, stitched precisely to the measurements I'd provided. Valforte's head designer, Madame Delacroix, insisted every bespoke piece begin with a toile fitting to sculpt perfection. The muslin draped elegantly on the hanger, promise woven into every thread. Yet I could not focus. My imagination conjured Lysandra's engagement gown instead. Rose gold silk charmeuse, bias cut to pool like molten metal at the hem. She had flaunted it during dress shopping months earlier, gloating over its exclusivity. But after the courtroom resolution, she had left it at the hotel in a heap, declaring it cursed. Armand had shipped it to storage. A clandestine idea sparked. What if I wore her abandoned gown to the annulment hearing? Tit for tat, courtroom couture mirroring betrayal. Symbolism sharp enough to slice. Caleb found me debating a mug of Earl Grey at the kitchen island, brows furrowed. You're plotting, he observed, flipping open his laptop. Strategizing, I corrected, detailing my notion. He arched a brow. Dramatic and legally permissible. But you'll need the gown released from storage. And alterations. I know a tailor. My former bridal seamstress, Anika Patel, no relation to the common name I avoided in protagonist naming, answered on the first ring. When I explained, her delighted gasp crackled through the speaker. Bring it tonight, Rowena. We'll transform that silk serpent into armor. Retrieving the gown required Armand's cooperation. I emailed. An hour later, he phoned, voice brittle. Take it, he said. I never want to see it again. He even arranged courier delivery to Anika's Soho studio. At twilight, I stepped through Anika's door. Bells chiming. She examined the rose gold gown under bright daylight bulbs, clicking her tongue at the extravagant fabric. Beautiful construction. Hideous intentions, she pronounced, then set pins between her lips. Onto the platform. I stood before trifold mirrors, while she molded silk against my curves. Unlike my own ruined ivory dress, subtle and heirloom-inspired, this creation clung like confession. The scooped back revealed the faint freckles along my spine. The split flutter sleeves brushed my biceps like butterfly wings. As Anika pinned, I studied my reflection. The woman staring back looked unafraid to blaze. "You realize," Anika spoke around her pins, "wearing this could provoke her into another outburst." "That may be exactly what we need," I said. "Let the court see her volatility." Anika's eyes gleamed admiration. "In that case, we'll ensure every seam is indestructible." The next morning, Caleb and I met with Leclerc's lead counsel, Veronica St. James, at his firm's mahogany-paneled conference suite overlooking the Thames. Veronica greeted us with a sculpted smile and a handshake crisp enough to slice paper. "I trust we can settle testimony parameters without wasting the court's time," she said, sliding a draft agreement across the table. Caleb skimmed, brow lifting. "You want unrestricted depositions, forensic examination of Ms. Callahan's personal finances, and access to her private correspondence with the petitioner. Irrelevant and unduly burdensome. Her sister's misrepresentations intertwine with Ms. Callahan's knowledge," Veronica countered. "Due diligence." I leaned forward. "I refuse to bankroll Lysandra's lies, Veronica. That's my knowledge." Caleb annotated the document in swift strokes, striking clauses. Written interrogatories first, limited to factual questions about the engagement timeline. No fishing into my client's finances. Production of communications only between Ms. Callahan and either party regarding the engagement or the gin merger. Veronica's manicured nails tapped impatience, but she relented. "I'll present this revision to Mr. Leclerc." As we rose, she added, "Be prepared. Lysandra may file a motion to quash your testimony. She blames you for the engagement's demise." I steadied my breath. Truth doesn't buckle under blame. Outside, a brisk wind whipped gray waves against the embankment. Caleb tucked stray hair behind my ear. "You handled that brilliantly." "One meeting down," I sighed. "A mountain to go." Over the next fortnight, life became a choreography of litigation and wedding logistics. By day, I drafted interrogatory responses. By night, I collaborated with Madame Delacroix via video call on my new ivory masterpiece. Somewhere between, I squeezed fittings with Anika for the rose gold gown. Caleb, too, rode the whirlwind. Prep sessions with expert witnesses, strategy conferences, and a quiet quest to secure a country manor venue that hadn't yet hosted a scandalous bride. He never complained, though fatigue etched shadows under his eyes. One Sunday, we escaped to Hampstead Heath with hot chocolates to breathe. Autumn leaves blazed around us. Bronze against low sun, Caleb laced fingers through mine. "Is this worth it?" I knew what he meant. The relentless battles, the public scrutiny, the risk of familial extinction. I stared across the ponds, ducks skimming ripples. "Justice seldom feels worth it until after," I said. "But I can't marry you under the weight of compromise." He pressed his lips to my knuckles. "Then we fight. Together." 48 hours before the annulment preliminary hearing, our inbox pinged. Lysandra's counsel had indeed moved to quash my deposition, claiming undue emotional harm and irrelevance. Caleb grinned. Predictable, and easily rebutted. He drafted a response citing my unique first-hand knowledge of her deception. But that night, a package arrived at our door. No return address. Inside lay a USB drive labeled, "Play me if you dare" asterisk in Sharpie. Caleb's jaw tightened. He scanned for tampering. Could be malware. "I'll open it on an isolated laptop," I said. We watched the screen populate with a single video file. I clicked play. The footage, grainy, showed me in the ballroom after Lysandra's gown sabotage, eyes ablaze, saying to Caleb, asterisk, "I'll make her regret breathing." My blood chilled. In isolation, the phrase sounded vicious. The clip cut abruptly to black with text. "Mosto, withdraw OR, this goes public." I slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding. "She's blackmailing me." Caleb exhaled. "Out of context smear. We have full footage. But she'll attempt trial by media." I paced, adrenaline surging. We counter by transparency. We'll include full video in our response and file an emergency protective order against intimidation. He nodded, already drafting. But expect escalation. Hearing day dawned crisp. I stood before the full-length mirror in Anika's studio, encased in rose-gold silk perfected to every contour. Anika zipped the back, smoothing fabric. You are luminous. I swallowed nerves. Let's hope luminescence translates to credibility. My hair swept into a low chignon, a few tendrils curled to soften steel. Minimal jewelry, pearl drops, my grandmother's bracelet. Caleb met me at the entrance, eyes widening. You're breathtaking. Then, lower, and terrifying, in the best way. A town car whisked us through morning traffic to the royal courts. Reporters swarmed, lenses flashing like meteor showers. Questions peppered. Rowena, are you testifying against your own sister? Do you regret suing? Is the wedding still on? I offered no sound bites. Inside courtroom 7, skylights tinted pale winter blue. Veronica conferred with Armand at petitioner's table. Lysandra sat behind defense counsel, rigid. When she saw me clad in her forsaken gown, her eyes widened, lips parting in silent outrage. A hush rippled across spectators. Proceedings commenced. The judge, a different one from our prior case, Lord Justice Whitcomb, addressed motions. Caleb presented our opposition to the quash. He played the blackmail clip, then the unedited segment, illustrating manipulation. Gasps fluttered through the gallery. Intimidation tactics have no place in these halls, Caleb concluded. We request sanctions and protective relief. Lysandra's counsel sputtered objections, claiming the clip had been leaked inadvertently by an unknown party. Whitcomb's gavel silenced him. Save it for evidence. Motion to quash is denied. Miss Callahan will be deposed next week. As for potential intimidation, I will hear arguments after discovery. Relief warmed my spine, but Lysandra's glare could have melted glaciers. She leaned to her solicitor, whispering furious. Minutes later, he stood, requesting permission to submit science new evidence, challenging my credibility. The clerk accepted a sealed envelope. Caleb's shoulders tensed. The judge broke the seal, skimmed contents. Brow furrowing, he passed the file to both counsels. Caleb's eyes flicked, then froze. He inhaled sharply and slid the papers to me. Inside lay printouts of emails, apparently written by me, sent to tabloid editors, offering exclusive dirt on my unhinged sister in exchange for payment. The signature bore my name. My stomach dropped. These are forgeries. Caleb rose, voice stony. Objection, your lordship. These documents are fabricated. Whitcomb eyed him. Proof, counsel? Immediate analysis of metadata will reveal falsified headers, Caleb argued. We request adjournment to obtain forensic verification. Veronica smirked. Opposition has had ample time for discovery. The judge considered. Given newness of submission, I'll allow a 48-hour continuance. But if authenticity stands, sanctions may reverse. Gavel struck. Adjourned. Lysandra swept past me, triumphant smile slicing. Tick-tock, sister, she whispered. Rose gold satin shimmering betrayal. I clenched fists. Fabric rustled like distant thunder. Outside, reporters shouted for reactions. Caleb shielded me into the car. Once doors shut, he pulled out his phone. I'll call our digital forensics expert now. His voice brooked no doubt, yet his eyes held worry. I stared at the forged emails, rage and fear seething. Someone sought to ruin me utterly. Perhaps Lysandra. Perhaps an accomplice. Either way, the countdown had begun. As the car merged into traffic, Big Ben tolled noon, 12 chimes, marking the start of our 48 hours to prove innocence or lose everything. The final chime echoed, swallowed by the city's roar, and I realized the next 2 days would decide not only the annulment, but my future wedding, my reputation, my life's trajectory. Failure was not an option. We arrived at Caleb's office war room, whiteboards covered in flowcharts of legal claims, timelines, and possible retaliations. He mobilized the team. Frankie, a cybercrime specialist, Naomi, evidence archivist, and Serge, a junior barrister with an eidetic memory of electronic records law. Frankie set up a secure workstation, cloning the email printouts into digital files. Headers are missing, she noted. Suspicious. She cross-referenced header fields with known server output, scanning for anomalies. Meanwhile, Naomi checked my actual sent mailboxes across accounts. None matched. Serge drafted a motion to compel disclosure of the source. Caleb prepared affidavit testimony attesting to chains of custody. Hours blurred. Coffee consumed. Rain lashed windows. At 3:17 a.m., Frankie straightened, triumphant. Got it. The forger used an open relays server in Moldova, spoofed DKIM keys, crudely. I can demonstrate alteration. Relief surged. Can we tie it to Lysandra? Frankie shrugged. Need further trace. But the IP used a VPN exit in Paris. Perhaps follow the money. Who paid for the service? Caleb tapped pen against lip. If we subpoena the provider, we might trace account creation to Lysandra's credit card. We'll need judge's approval, Serge warned. Then we seek it at sunrise, Caleb resolved. With dawn's first pallor, we filed emergency motion for forensic subpoena. Caleb argued before a bleary-eyed duty judge via video link. Our evidence persuaded. Subpoena granted. Return due within 24 hours. That day crawled as we awaited logs. I found refuge in design sketches from Madame Delacroix, shading lace appliques while my thoughts galloped. Mid-afternoon, Frankie burst into the conference room waving papers. The VPN account was paid via crypto wallet, worth tracing. But the credit card on the hosting invoice belongs to... She paused for effect. Armand's personal Amex. Shock ricocheted. Armand forged evidence against me, but he requested my cooperation. Maybe Lysandra coerced him, Caleb posited. Or he seeks leverage to expedite annulment. Betrayal stung anew. I had worn the man's silk gift, now he twisted a knife. We strategized. Present findings to the court, expose forgery, request sanctions against petitioners, and at same time decide whether to testify given Armand's duplicity. Caleb cautioned. If we decline, they'll subpoena, but if we testify, we can reveal this fraud. I squared shoulders. Then we testify. 48 hours elapsed. We returned to courtroom 7. Reporters buzzed about leaked rumors of forged evidence. Lysandra and Armand sat apart, tension visible. Their counsel whispered urgently. Judge Whitcomb opened. Caleb presented forensic report. Frankie testified via affidavit. The chain led to Armand's card. Courtroom gasps. Veronica attempted damage control, claiming internal miscommunication. Whitcomb's glare could fell oaks. He struck the forged emails from record, sanctioned the petitioner £50,000, and extended protective orders. He then addressed me directly. Ms. Callahan, will you provide testimony in good faith? I rose. Yes, my lord. Date set. 1 week. But as we exited, a courier thrust an envelope at me. Inside, a glossy photograph of Caleb and me on Hampstead Heath, target symbols drawn over our faces, and a note. You help him, you lose him. My blood iced. Caleb read, jaw clenching. Threats. We alert police. I stared at crosshairs inked over his gentle eyes. Fear mounted like tidal surge, but so did fury. This ends, I whispered. I go to court, and I wear this gown again, not as provocation but as declaration. I will not be silenced. He slid an arm around me. And I'll be beside you. But even as determination steeled, a question loomed. Who else would resort to threats beyond Lysandra and Armand? Whose stake ran deeper? We didn't yet know that the answer would unearth a family secret older than our feud, and threaten to topple everything we'd built. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere distant. Clouds churned slate against a waning sun. The air smelled of copper and storm. The battle lines had shifted beyond simple lawsuits into something darker. And with 7 days until my testimony, the clock ticked louder than ever. To be continued. It began with a single stitch. The needle, sterling silver, heirloom from my great-grandmother's sewing kit, pierced satin the color of chilled champagne, drew through a whisper of thread, and emerged gleaming in the lamplight of my tiny workroom. I had never sewn anything more complex than a button, yet on this breath-held winter night, I set about altering Lysandra's engagement gown to fit my own frame. A fit of spite? Perhaps. But breathe. It was the only command my body still obeyed, as Lysandra's laughter ricocheted around the glittering ballroom like shards of broken baubles. The guests, our mutual friends, Caleb's law firm partners, a smattering of distant cousins I hardly recognized, stood frozen in horrified tableau. I tasted champagne on the air and something coppery beneath it, the metallic sting of humiliation bleeding into rage. My wedding dress, MY dress, clung to Lysandra's frame as though tailored for treachery. She had even kept the bespoke cathedral veil, the one embroidered with sprigs of Caledonian heather, because Caleb had proposed on Arthur's seat and declared me the wildflower of his life. The beadwork sparkled under the chandeliers, each glint a little dagger to the chest. "Surprise!" Lysandra trilled, twirling to show the full sweep of the silk. Around her neck hung Gran's sapphire locket, another heirloom she'd apparently pilfered, but in that instant I cared more about the fabric that was supposed to carry me down the aisle in 4 weeks. I became aware of Caleb's hand hovering inches from the small of my back, unsure whether to steady me or hurl himself between sisters before blood was spilled on the parquet. "Rowena?" he whispered. "I'm all right," I lied. Then, louder, to Lysandra, "Take it off." The band stopped mid-bar. A violinist let his bow fall with a pathetic thud. Somewhere, a phone camera clicked to video mode, the ghoulish symphony of social ruin. Lysandra tilted her head, wide-eyed innocence plastered over her face like theater grease paint. "Darling, you always said you wanted me to feel what true love feels like. Well, consider this empathy." She raised her left hand. An obnoxiously large solitaire winked, blinding me with its facetious sparkle. That stone was my grandmother's too, meant for my finger. A roar started low in my throat. "Do you even understand what you've done?" "Oh, sweetie," she crooned, sashaying forward so the train sluiced behind her like a comet's tail. "I'm giving your dress its debut. You should be grateful. Look how everyone's admiring it." At that, I scanned the room. Admiration? No. People stared with a mix of pity and morbid fascination, one usually reserves for motorway pile-ups. The vicar, who'd come simply to bless the engagement cake, muttered a prayer that sounded suspiciously like a plea for deliverance. Caleb stepped beside me, spine rigid. "Lysandra, this is theft." She giggled, a sound altogether too girlish for the 30-year-old adversary she was. "Oh, come on, Rowena's just being dramatic. She won't mind sharing." My fists curled until nails drew crescents in my palms. "You didn't ask. You broke into my flat." "Borrowed the spare key from Mum," she corrected with a shrug, as though that were a parking validation. "Stole my gown and paraded it at your engagement announcement." There it was, the raw truth, hanging like a guillotine blade. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw Caleb's junior associate elbow a partner, both of them mouthing court case. Something in Lysandra's expression shifted, brief, a flicker, before smoothing back into smugness. "I always thought the shade of ivory was too sophisticated for you, R.O. But on me? Exquisite." She gave a little curtsy. I swallowed the urge to lunge. "Return my dress tonight, or I will send the police for it." "Oh, darling, you'd look petty." Her voice dipped conspiratorial. "Besides, you'll never fit in it again once the stress eating begins." She glanced at my waist pointedly. Caleb's knuckles whitened. "We're leaving," he announced, placing a protective arm around my shoulders. But as I turned, Lysandra called after me, "Don't forget your invitation to our ceremony. It's in 3 weeks. Hope your tailor can whip up something new in time." Her laughter followed us out, a hyena's chuckle echoing through marble corridors. Caleb hailed a black cab while I stood under the porte-cochere, rain beginning to needle from a bruise-colored sky. "Ro," he murmured, "you're shaking." I looked down. Indeed, my hands fluttered at my sides like trapped birds. It's only fabric, I managed, but the words tasted of ash. He opened the door for me. It's not the dress. It's what she stole out of tonight. Your moment. The cab smelled of wet wool and lavender air freshener. I leaned my head against the glass, watching raindrops race down in crooked paths. My moment. That distilled image I'd carried since childhood of walking toward Caleb while violins soared. In a single stunt, Lysandra had contaminated it. As the taxi pulled away, a hush fell over the city streets, Sunday 2 a.m. stillness, punctuated only by the occasional late bus. Yet inside me, a different kind of traffic jammed every mental lane. Grief, anger, betrayal. Rowena, Caleb's voice broke through. Listen. I turned. We can postpone the wedding, give you time to pick another gown. I thought of Gran's wry grin. Never let a bully delay your joy. No, I whispered. I won't grant her that satisfaction. Caleb nodded. Then we go to war. His use of asterisk we steadied me more than any sedative. Monday. Solicitors' Row, Edinburgh. The rain persisted into morning, pattering against the grand Georgian windows of Blakeney and Company. The conference room smelled of polished mahogany and old ambitions. Across the table sat Francesca Blakeney, senior partner, litigation legend, and, thanks to Caleb's hurried phone call, a woman prepared to unleash hell. Francesca tapped her Mont Blanc on a legal pad. Miss Callahan, let me be certain, the gown is custom, correct? Original design? Yes, I said. Sketches, fabric swatches, and final fit photos, all documented. The designer is willing to testify. Excellent. We can file a theft report and request an injunction preventing your sister from displaying, wearing, or altering said dress. Additionally, emotional distress damages. She glanced at me. Are you prepared to face family backlash? I met her stare. My sister crossed a line, and my parents handed her the map. Francesca smiled thinly. Very well. I'll have the paperwork drafted by lunch. She rose to leave, leaving the scent of bergamot in her wake. Caleb squeezed my knee under the table. You're sure? I'm done being the accommodating sister, I said. If she wanted a war, she just enlisted me. Tuesday. Mum's Conservatory, Perthshire. Mum's roses, English heritage climbers, usually smelled sweet. Today, the blooms seemed to recoil as we stepped inside. Mum sat on a cane chair, cardigan fastened at the throat as though expecting an Arctic blast. Rowena, Caleb, tea? No, thank you, Caleb replied, the politeness icy. Mum's gaze skittered over my face. I suppose you're here about the incident. Call it what it was, I said. Theft. Mum flinched. Oh, darling, Lysandra only wanted to feel special. She's always been sensitive. That word, sensitive, felt like sandpaper. Lysandra was about as sensitive as a sledgehammer. She broke into my flat. You share a key ring, Mum protested. No, you handed her my spare. Without permission. Mum's mouth thinned. She said you wouldn't mind. I mind. Silence. Rain hammered the conservatory roof. Finally, Mum sighed. Look, she's stressed. Planning a wedding is... I barked a laugh. Her wedding? Mum, she's not even engaged to Callum until Friday. Mum's eyes widened guiltily, so she'd known the timing. I continued. I've filed civil action. The papers arrive tomorrow. I'd rather keep it private, but if she flaunts that dress again... Mum rose, pace jittery. Court? Rowena, think of family. I had pounded the point thinking of family. Mine and Caleb's. I stood too. And I'm done letting Lysandra rewrite the terms of sisterhood. Mum's chair creaked as she sank back down. Tears glimmered, but I felt none of the usual pull to soothe them. Caleb placed a business card on the table. Our solicitor's details. Lysandra has 48 hours to return the gown in pristine condition, or proceedings commence. We left the roses weeping alone. Term Hasno Wednesday, social media siege. By dawn, hashtags #DressGate and #SistersAbatage trended regionally. Someone at the party had posted a blurry photo. Lysandra twirling, me in background mid-gasp. The internet, ravenous, latched on. Comments ranged from *Team Rowena* to *staged PR stunt*. But within hours, lifestyle blogs picked it up. An influencer tweeted, "Imagine stealing your sister's wedding dress for clout. The audacity is couture." I spent the morning screenshotting evidence of reputational damage for Francesca. At noon, a courier delivered a velvet box. Inside lay Gran's sapphire locket. No note. Guilt offering or power play. I doubted Lysandra knew the difference anymore. I threaded the chain around my neck, fingers trembling. Gran's warmth seemed retained in the metal. I whispered gratitude into the facets. Then I drafted an email to Lysandra. "Return the gown by midnight. This is your final courtesy." Midnight deadline. The gown did not arrive. Instead, at 12:05, my email pinged. An attachment. A selfie of Lysandra wearing the dress while sipping champagne in what looked like a luxury hotel suite. Caption: "Cheers to the bride-to-be." Oh wait, that's me? She'd CC'd Mum. Below, a single sentence: "Catch me if you can." I stared at the screen until pixels bled into tears. Across the living room, Caleb read over my shoulder. He inhaled slowly. "She's escalating." I'm finished playing. I opened a new document. Numeniagen Straightais motion for emergency restraining order. Numeniagen Straightais Moesting, Thursday, courtroom 4, A. Jalales. The oak-paneled walls smelled of dust and retribution. Lysandra swept in wearing an ivory pencil dress. Mercifully not mine, but her smirk was unrepentant. Callum trailed after, cheeks mottled. Our eyes locked. Electricity crackled. Judge Hazelport wasted no time. "Miss Callahan, Mr. Callahan." She nodded to Caleb. The identical surname still amused her. "Counsel's ready?" Francesca stood. "Ready, Your Honor." The hearing unfolded like a chess match. Francesca produced receipts, design sketches, security cam footage of Lysandra using Mum's key. Lysandra's counsel argued familial borrowing and, quote, lack of malicious intent. But then Francesca played the video, Lysandra's champagne selfie, time-stamped after the courtesy deadline. The room hushed. Judge Hazelport adjusted her spectacles. "Ms. Lysandra Callahan, you appear to delight in provoking your sister." Lysandra's facade cracked. I glimpsed fury behind it. She hadn't expected the selfie to surface. The judge granted the restraining order, ordered immediate return of the gown, and set a date for civil trial. Financial penalties loomed like thunderheads. Lysandra stormed out before proceedings ended. Cameras flashed outside. Journalists smelled blood. Friday. The counterstrike. At 8 a.m., a solicitor's letter slid beneath our door. Defamation and emotional distress claim. Lysandra suing me for public shaming. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled coffee. Caleb wasn't amused. This is her tactic. Bury you in litigation until you capitulate. Then we dig in. I opened my laptop. Social media still thrummed. A bridal magazine requested an interview. I declined. Instead, I penned a statement. Boundaries matter, even in blood, especially in blood. The post went viral. At noon, Mum called, weary, small. "Rowena, she's unleashing. She says you ruined her fairy tale." Her fairy tale is built on stolen bricks. Mum sighed. "She's your sister. And I'm her scapegoat." Quote, "We hung up without resolution." Francesca Saturday, the auction discovery. Francesca phoned, voice clipped. "Rowena, you need to see this link." I clicked. Mott 112, bespoke silk organza gown. Starting, bid £30,000. Accompanying photo. Mine address on a mannequin, veil artfully draped. The auction site promised anonymity, but the boutique address was in Glasgow, Lysandra's new city. My stomach iced. She's selling it. Caleb swore. That violates the restraining order. Francesca, we can request police accompaniment, seize the gown on premise, file contempt charges. I closed my eyes. Do it. Quenches numbers Sunday. Seizure presses. Detective Harris met us outside Isle of Dreams bridal consignment. Inside, mannequins posed like quiet conspirators. Shop owner is cooperative, Harris said. Consignor used an alias, but CCTV will confirm identity. A glass case held my dress, tagged simply number 112. Seeing it inert, divorced from Lysandra's body, I felt both relief and grief. Evidence photos snapped, chain of custody documents signed, the dress sealed in protective garment bag and placed in squad car. As rain began anew, Harris turned to me. You want to press criminal charges? I looked at Caleb, at the garment bag. Yes, I said. She crossed from spite into crime. Caleb wrapped an arm around me. We're with you. Touch Monday. Breaking point letter. An envelope awaited on our welcome mat. Handwritten, my name looping in Lysandra's florid script. Inside, Rowena. You always thought you deserved everything. Mom's affection, Grand's jewels, a perfect fiancé. Well, I'm tired of living in your whitewashed shadow. If you pursue this, I'll make sure Caleb never walks you down any aisle at all. You know secrets too, remember? Back off or watch your world burn. Stock sell. My pulse pounded. Threats, veiled but unmistakable. I scanned the letter for fingerprints, then slipped it into an evidence bag. Caleb read it, jaw set. She's threatening us. She's desperate. Desperate people make reckless choices, he said, voice low. We need to protect ourselves. I nodded. We move the wedding forward. Caleb blinked. Forward? Yes. This weekend. Small civil ceremony. She can't sabotage what's already happened. His face softened into awe. Marry me in 6 days? I should have married you yesterday. He kissed me, anchor in storm. Tuesday, Operation Swift Vows. We secured a registrar, a florist, and venue. An Art Deco library with marble columns and velvet reading chairs. 10 guests only, closest friends, Caleb's widowed father, my godmother, Aunt Maureen. Dress? The seized gown would be evidence for months. I refused to buy from a boutique now tainted by heartbreak. Instead, Aunt Maureen produced her 1950s tea-length wedding dress, ivory dupioni, pearl buttons down the spine like a ladder to hope. We spent the afternoon with a seamstress nipping the waist, letting out hem. When I saw myself in the mirror, I gasped. Not a princess vision, something fiercer. A war bride marrying courage itself. Caleb chose a charcoal tweed suit. Simple, timeless. We kept plans secret. Phones went to silent, schedules cleared. But secrets, I'd learn, have porous skins. Mike's pains. Night Tanvam's tribbles. Wednesday evening, the confrontation. I stepped out of the seamstress's studio into dusk. Street lamps glowed amber. Caleb had gone to finalize the registrar appointment. I decided to walk the few blocks home for air. Halfway, a figure detached from alley shadow. Lysandra. She wore dark skinny jeans, hair in a severe bun. No waltzing bride tonight. Rowena, she called, stepping into lamplight. I stopped, heart bucking. She held up both hands, palms outward. I'm not here to fight. I said nothing. She stood closer than comfort, eyes rimmed red. They seized the dress. You embarrassed me. You embarrassed yourself. A muscle ticked in her jaw. Do you think Callum respects me now? The internet calls me thief. Actions have names. She exhaled a shaky breath. Return the restraining order. I'll withdraw the defamation suit. I studied her. And the criminal charges? She flinched. Row, prison? You should have considered that before blackmail threats. She looked genuinely startled. I never threatened you. I pulled the letter from my bag, clear evidence, sleeve glinting. Your handwriting. Lysandra's face went bloodless. I didn't write that. Stop lying. I swear. She reached for the letter. I stepped back. She swallowed. Row, someone's playing us. Footsteps echoed behind me. I turned. Callum, Lysandra's fiancé, emerged from darkness, face grim. Found her? He asked Lysandra, ignoring me. She sagged. Relief or fear, I couldn't tell. Yes. He eyed the evidence sleeve. That her receipt for ruining our lives? I backed away. Something feral gleamed in his gaze. Callum advanced. You cost me shareholders when your scandal tanked my stock. Tonight, we settle. He reached inside his coat. Lightning flashed, thunder answering. In that split second, I saw metal glint. I ran. Boots pounded behind me, rain slicked pavement, skirt tangled my legs. I veered into a side street lit only by flickering neon of a shut pub. Rowena! Lysandra's voice, frantic. But Callum closed the distance. Ahead, a wrought iron gate, a dead end. I crashed through, stumbling into a courtyard behind the pub. Bins overflowed, the smell of stale ale clinging. Callum entered, breath heaving. You should have stayed docile. He raised the object, not a gun, his smartphone. Confusion lanced me. Camera lens glared. Confession time. Admit you staged the dress theft for publicity, or I leak what I know about Caleb's last case. What? I blinked rain from lashes. Your fiancé suppressed evidence, Callum hissed. He'll lose his license, you'll lose him. Lies, but powerful if broadcast. No. He stepped closer. Then say the words. Lightning again. Roar of thunder masked Lysandra's arrival. She shoved between us, arms out. Callum, stop! He snarled. Move! She didn't. You said you loved me. He laughed bitter. Love? I loved the stock price jump when our engagement rumors started. But you. Media poison. Her shoulders slumped. You used me. He raised the phone. Countdown from 3. I acted. Snatched a wet bottle from recycling bin, smashed it against ground, brandishing jagged neck. Stay back, I warned. Callum eyed the glass. Cute. Sirens wailed in distance. Maybe random, maybe someone called police for a noise complaint. Callum hesitated. In that beat, Lysandra grabbed his wrist, twisting. Phone clattered. I kicked it into puddle. He shouted, wrenching free, backhanding her. She hit cobblestone with a cry. I lunged, bottle aimed, but he caught my wrist, strength overpowering mine. Shards bit into my palm. I screamed as glass slipped. He shoved me against brick. Air whooshed from lungs. He raised fist. Sirens grew louder, a patrol car skidding to alley mouth. Red-blue strobes painted walls. Drop it! An officer shouted. Callum froze. I slid to my knees, vision dimming. Rain washed blood from my hand into gutters. An officer cuffed Callum. Another knelt beside Lysandra, checking pulse. I stared at my sister. Face bruised, hair unbound, eyes dazed but open. Rowena, she rasped. I reached for her, fingers slick. I'm here. Quote. Her lips moved. Sorry. Blue lights reflected in her tear tracks, a sea of regret. I felt consciousness waver, the world tilting. And that's when Caleb's voice, distant, panicked, cut through everything. Rowena, stay with me. Darkness lapped at edges. I fought to keep eyes open, but the night reeled. Just before the void swallowed me, I heard Callum roar. You think this ends here? I have the proof. Caleb's career is over. Silence crashed over me, thick as velvet.